All right, let's get started. Background, first question. Carter Woodson announced the Negro History Week in February of 1926 to help inspire us to greater achievements. In response to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, young Blacks on the college campuses became increasingly conscious of links to Africa and the idea of Black History Month. First question then. Given the brief outline of the history of Black History Month and the recent emphasis to foster inclusivity, equity, and belonging in social norms in the US, is Black History Month still necessary? Is it a positive or an adverse social tool in the 21st century? To the panel, first opportunity goes to team 4 for about 4 minutes. I'm not sure if you've talked before. You want to pick someone? So 4 minutes, team 4. If you don't remember who that is, or some people don't know, Dr. Smith, Dr. Woods, Dr. Maxwell, and Advisor Bovar. Go.
The first part of the debate for this team, I volunteered to be the person to go first, and thanks for giving a little bit of the background on the significance. For people who don't know, it really started out as more a Negro History and Literature Week. It progressed to only being a week, and then in 1976, President Ford declared it for the month of February would be Black History Month. So when you think about why would we want to continue to support something that educates all of us, there are so many assumptions that people make, both white and Black, and an opportunity to get to really be informed, have discussions, learn more about what a lot of people have advocated for, not just the history, but also to speak of African civilizations and what the contributions have been, that is all part of what contributes to the culture of Black history. One of the things that I think is so important is that we expand our awareness by being informed, and we really only have knowledge of what we're exposed to. And so an opportunity to be engaged. I think Newton mentioned it in the beginning that there will be daily updates on a Google site. And as you look around, there are many opportunities that are brought forward because of the focus on Black History Month, that there's actually a daily update that you can get from Amazon on Black women and their contributions to what they have contributed, as well as there's a publication of Black authors that's available. And so when you think about literature and all of the various areas that society can be informed about, that this shines a light on resources that we might not necessarily be aware of or look at if we didn't have a custom of having a month dedicated to really engaging ourselves and learning more about Black history and the contributions through society and through history. So I'll default my 32 seconds back to you.
All right, great, fantastic. Thank you very much. Team against, right?
Very good.
I'll take that.
This is
okay. For those who don't know, I'm sorry. For those who don't know, right? Student Jackson, teacher Slayton, student Johnson, and Dr. Ivy. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Very good. Initially, Black history was a way of teaching students, teaching the Black community, remembering about Black and African-American contributions. Such stories had been lost and forgotten. And so we really understand why it started and why the importance is there. It is no doubt that a continued engagement with history is vital, as it helps give context for the present. However, year after year, I hear the dutiful recitation of the same familiar facts, speaking on Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, George Washington Carver, etc., confining the history of an entire race of people to a 28-day period not only diminishes the significance of their contributions, but it also allows the greater truth to be erased. It's not talking about for the rest of the year. In 1926, Carter Woodson fervently believed that Black people should be proud of their heritage, and all Americans should understand the largely overlooked achievements of Black Americans. He came up with the idea of Negro History Week to encourage Black Americans to become more interested in their own history and their heritage. But even Carter Woodson, who was an African-American historian, intended for Black history to be taught as part of the American history and looked forward to the day when a designated period would no longer be necessary. In 1976, the week had been set aside to honor Black accomplishments that was expanded to a month and called Black History Month. 1 month full of story of the accomplishments of Black people is so buried that we think those who are not celebrated during that time is considered exceptional. We say it's time for a change, and it's time to expand 1 month of recognition of Black history to 1 year, and that is our position. I yield my seconds.
Okay, so we still have about 1 minute left on that. Vinnie, Bob, what do you think? Black history necessary or not?
Yeah, I'm looking at all the questions and everything, but I'll try to answer the question and not be a politician. Is it necessary? I'd say yes, for most of the reasons that the affirmative people have said. For one, it's American history to begin with. Whether it's recognized in the books or not is irrelevant. It's American history because we were here. So of course it needs to be told. Of course it shouldn't be just once, for 1 month out of the year. And that's where things like Kwanzaa come in. And that's where things like people like me who talk about it all the time, it's not just 1 month because we make it all the time. So also in light of people, the dominant Anglo-Saxon culture in this country, America, rewriting history and never told accurate history, it's important to be told. Granted, there is too much of the usual characters, absolutely, Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, but the counter to that argument is there are plenty of people who turn the channel onto that conversation for the first time. So while you or me and everyone else on this call has probably heard about all of the usual heroes way too much, there are people who haven't. And there are people who are on the other side of the fence in different cultures who haven't. So of course it's important.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. For many decades, there have been ongoing debate as to whether Black History Month should exist, right? Question is, right, is it a unifying or divisive event? Does it point out or overemphasize contributions of one group over another group who have also contributed to the American experience? Does it cause people to look backwards more than forward, stimulating more hate and discontent than love and peace? Question. What is your position on these questions, and maybe some themes about resurfacing questions as to whether Black History Month exists? What does that seem to suggest? Panel, this time first up, team against.
So give me the specific question we're going after this time.
Yeah, this time about the themes here is, let's see, resurfacing questions as to whether Black History Month should exist, right? What does this seem to suggest? The fact that it's even a question, a recurring question.
Okay, my questions are a little off from what you're saying, but our position, once again, is not so much where Black history and the study of Black history is not important. Of course, is important, is very important. Our strong position is it should be extended throughout the year, not confined to 1 month, but extended throughout the year. I have some information as far as even how that can happen. And I actually want to share that very quickly with the team, because knowing that Black history is American history, there are some very basic ways that we can focus on Black history throughout the whole year. One, support Black-owned businesses. Especially during COVID, Black-owned businesses were greatly impacted, and that support is needed today. For educators, include the discussion of Black African-American individuals in the curriculum, in the text, and everyday situations. Incorporate Black perspectives. Does everyone know how many Black authors do not have their books in our universities, in our grade schools as well, even in some cases pulled from libraries? Incorporate the Black book and the writings and the authors in the curriculums. And also, administrators, this is a time to hire more Black teachers as well. So those very simple, plain things can be integrated so that on a day-to-day basis, Black history is upfront, is discussed, and is not hidden. And that's the problem today. And that's why we are supporting Black history for the full year.
All right. This is great. Okay. Thank you very much. Team 4.
So I'd like to step into this gap. One of the things that we have to be careful about when we discuss Black history is not to conflate the issues. In conflating the issues, all of a sudden we find ourselves blaming Black history as being divisive. However, it's not the history that we talk about that's divisive. What's divisive is human beings. Human beings overwhelmingly have a proclivity for being divisive about anything and everything, all the way beginning back when we were just little children. And if we take, world history and consider it so far as like Cain and Abel, there was Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and then here's Cain killing Abel. It wasn't about history. It was about the human nature that people possess and what they do with it. So to hear the facts and to hear someone talk about life as being part of history in this country or any other country, we do ourselves an injustice as a people to say that Black history is divisive, instead of looking at the people who are acting divisively on their own accord. No one can make you act divisively unless it's in you and you decide to take umbrage with whatever is being taught at the time. So, one of the things that happens, we talk about white fragility. We don't have to have white fragility if we decide not to take offense to what people are saying, because they are telling you about themselves. They're telling you about their people. They're telling you about where they came from. They're telling you about what they've achieved. Those are things that add to society. And the lessons of the past help us to be better in the future if we'll let them.
Okay.
And if I
about a minute, about a minute left on that side.
If I can just tag, I'm actually going to agree with Dr. Woods. Black history is not what creates divisiveness. It is the people. And there is a statement that I say as far as hate and discontent. There was a question to the panel if it caused hate and discontent. And my statement is hate and discontent comes from fear of pushing someone down just to see them rise above and excel. It's not a problem with Black history. It's a problem with what could be in the minds of individuals. We agree on that point, Dr. Woods.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Let's see, Advisor Bovard, you still have some time left there, about a minute.
And by the way, one of the things about Black history is it allows for other people who did not know about us to all of a sudden learn about us, especially when they're coming to this country. And that helps with developing understanding. If we're going to walk together as a country of people, then we have to know each other so that we can respect each other and then honor each other.
All right. Advisor Bovard, you still have a little bit of time, about 30 seconds or so. You're on mute. You're on mute.
You would think after 2 years I'd figure it out. Can you go ahead and give me the question one more time?
Yeah, we're just trying to say here, even questioning Black History Month, why does this question keep coming up? Why does it seem to exist, even questioning?
I
Why do you think
think,
it keeps coming up?
why does it keep coming up? I think part of it, I think Dr. Woods just touched on it. People that are not familiar with Black history, I think that is not just people coming to this country. I think you have many, many people within this country who are not as familiar with Black history as you might imagine. I think you have people that are from, generalizing, more rural areas that are not familiar. I think you do have themes of white fragility that are massively triggered by that. And the debate then becomes, why are we doing this? Why is this important for folks that are not as familiar with it? It has not traditionally been taught in many schools.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then. You mentioned white fragility. Great segue then, right? In 2018, the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, right, which got much attention after the murder of George Floyd, and it caused possibly white Americans, right, to analyze and maybe evaluate themselves regarding maybe racist implicit bias that many may not have known they had, right? The concepts there, the themes, explored more in the read ahead, talked about individualism and objectivity, racism and morality, white solidarity and silence, and white discomfort. Question. As we examine the meaning and practice of Black History Month, are there any themes in DiAngelo's concept of white fragility trigger? If so, justify why that triggering is grounds to continue or discontinue the practice of Black History Month as we know it. Panelists, first up this time, team 4.
Yes, I'd like to start by saying what we're really talking about is identity politics. And as much as many of the panelists said that Black History Month is American history, Black history is world history. It didn't start with the American dream. It didn't start with the North American or the Middle Passage. It started from the cradle of civilization. So when we start talking about identity politics and the erasure and the omission and the ability to tell one narrative and one story about a race, that's when we get into problems, right? That's where we see a devaluing of whose story is more valued in the society in which we live in, especially when we're talking about the laws that have been used for oppression and the ways in which we have used laws to silence and to suppress not just identity, right? Because when we look at identity itself, Black History Month includes the celebration of identity, right? The achievement, the contribution of a race, but at the same time, the imagery that we see often is counter and in opposition to that. So yes, we have February, in which we are invited to celebrate these little known facts about Black history. But if we were to talk about world history, African Americans, Africans have always, the Moors, they've always been part of that narrative. The question becomes, when do we stop looking at separate, right? The reason to separate a history from the overall guiding history, and which narrative is more important, which story is more important to tell, right? So we have these long laundry list of people who made these contributions, but as long as we're looking at a critical race theory and we're looking to censor and silence, and we're going to put slavery and relish it to the back of a history book to say a small paragraph in chapter 17, then we are going to be constantly faced with these opposing narratives. Whose valuable history is more important? And what are we going to do to silence these not new narratives, but these narratives that are happening alongside of history?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smith. Team against.
So our aspect of it was, with the white fragility, and against being against, just the 1 month for Black history, or as Dr. Smith said, I mean, it's world history essentially. But in that aspect of it being against on the white fragility side, I mean, you have to look at it. It's one of those deals where you're looking at it and the kids in school are not getting a full month. They're not getting the whole 28 days of learning strictly about it, because you have different holidays. You have President's Day tied in there. You have Valentine's Day. Kids are not getting it. You have some schools where they're out for winter break in February. So you're cutting down the instructional days. You have areas of this country where it's extremely cold. They're losing snow days. So you have to find a way to still teach it, but you only give them 28 days, and you take it and make it all year tied into regular history. And that way it's being taught all year long, instead of just saying, well, you get 28 days, unless it's a leap year, or you get the 28 days, then you get Juneteenth, then you get Kwanzaa. So the white fragility aspect of it is essentially, it's not a bad idea, but it's only, I guess you're saying it is, you can only be offended if you allow yourself to be offended. If you don't allow yourself to be offended, then it's not going to be an issue on your end. I mean, or anybody else's end for that matter. I mean, no matter how you put it, I mean, you have white people that get offended by Black history. You got Black people that get offended by white history. So it's essentially no matter what you do. I mean, you just have to find a mean or medium, a happy medium in there, and just say, this is where you're going with it.
Okay, team against. You still have about 45 seconds or so. Team against, anybody there?
Yes, I'll chime in with some additional as well. When we think of some of the main points with white fragility, and because we talk of the advancements of African Americans, the accomplishments of African Americans, if I'm someone who's not of African American, a Black American, I'm feeling as if, attention is taken away from me. I'm feeling, a little frightened because you're talking about a people, and all those points with white fragility. My focus or points on this is the contributions of African Americans, of Blacks, should not be confined based on the feelings of individuals as what is identified with white fragility. If we look at any of the growth directions of our world, as it was stated, of the United States as well, we don't confine that based on what someone may say. Right? It just doesn't make sense. And then some other things regarding D'Angelo's book and comments that she had in it. A lot of those statements were not factual. They really were not. And so several individuals have written on her book, and they have spoken just about that, and even how she really is speaking across areas and presenting in corporate locations. There was one person for Levi who said after she came and did her presentation, the end result was creating awareness. But we are well beyond that point of just awareness. Without the contributions of Black Americans, where would we be? All right, that's way beyond just awareness. That's talking about what and recognizing and not confining the capabilities of African Americans, just how much we as a country, just how much the world, as it was stated, can grow. To me, white fragility has no place when it comes to speaking and uplifting the accomplishments of Black Americans.
Thank you. Continuing then in this book, right? In the same book on white fragility, right, they had something called a good, bad binary, right? Where she explains basically two choices or categories that white folks often use to help separate themselves from racism: color blindness and honoring diversity. She insists that wanting to jump over the hard personal work and get to solutions is the foundation of white fragility. So celebrations like Black History Month may be exposed, often brushed over brutal facts about injustices of the past that have laid the foundation and set in motion unconscious behaviors of today. Highlighting this may force folks to embark on the hard personal work on some level and in some capacity. Many argue that this type of introspection should be a personal choice. Question: where do you stand? Does Black History Month trigger a foundational underpinning of D'Angelo's concept of white fragility? Is it a violation of individual choice when Black History Month is endorsed by the federal government and celebrated as part of the cultural norms during the month of February here in the US? Panel, team against is up first.
All right, I'll answer this question for us as a team. With D'Angelo, when she just decided to group all white people in one category, unfortunately, it made it seem like they all had an unconscious bias, or that they were all taught to be either racist and not believe that Black people had as many rights as them. So that's why the color blindness came, or the non-racist came, or that they would call, I'm going to say this, a Black sheep, if they decided they wanted to stand up for the rights of Black people. So it could be a trigger if we're thinking in D'Angelo's view of white fragility, that there is a Black History Month. But then again, it could not be a trigger. It all depends on the unconscious bias that person has. And I can say that I know a lot of people are probably raised a certain way, but once they leave the house, they start changing their thinking and how they think and feel and perceive other people based on either the area they're in, the people that they are around, or just how they view. So the views that their parents had, they may not feel the same way once they go out into the world. So that question is a yes and no, because for some people it can be a trigger. But then you have to ask yourself, is there a White History Month? Why should there be a Black History Month and there's not a White History Month? Do we really need that Black History Month? Like, is there a Jewish History Month? Is there like all these different months? If it's like my colleagues have said, if it's history, we should be teaching it every day as history, because like Karen said, it shaped the history. What previous Black people have done has shaped the history that we have today. So it should not just be spotlight just for 28 days, which is also the shortest month in the year.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Team 4.
I have to say something to that, Maya, simply because the images and the things that we're inundated with as Black folk are so destructive and so dehumanizing that I believe that there should be a celebration every year of Black excellence, if you will, because yes, there are triggers. I teach DEI, and triggering is absolutely necessary. Triggering tells you from the unconscious space why this issue is problematic for you. So if we don't recognize those triggers, then we can't reach what we would call cultural humility, right? Cultural humility requires that we look at our racism and many people will tell you they're not racist. I will tell you that's not true. But we have to look at our racism, and we have to start working to be better. When you know better, you do better, right? We've heard this over and over again. But the perceptions and the triggers are there to make you uncomfortable, to tell you that this information is bothering me. I hear all the time, my parents didn't own slaves, but yes, did you benefit from the fact that these laws were in place? I mean, when we talk about seats at the table, many groups, not just Blacks, Native Americans, LGBTIQ, all of them are starting to get seats at the table, but why is that necessary? That's my 2 cents.
If I can
Okay.
add to that, I think all of us in higher ed assume that everybody has been exposed to this greater awareness. And I agree with Dr. Ivy, we should be so far past awareness, right? But the greater United States just isn't there yet. I know where I grew up, I promise you, they are not there yet. The exposure has not been there. The desire is not there. So with this triggering of the white fragility, it's a real thing. And Black History Month allows that in like Dr. Smith just said, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for them to have to face the reality that, yeah, you really are racist. Just because there are no African Americans in Cattaraugus County, New York, you really are racist, because the lack of exposure is there. To take that away, where are they going to get it? Where is this going to be learned? Where are they going to build the stamina to deal with the racism? And unless it's kind of like the you're no stronger than your weakest link as a country, until we can get everybody to that awareness and beyond, we're not going to get anywhere. The rest of us can be here, but until we get everybody there, I don't know how we progress.
Thank you. It is time to go to the breakout, but before that, I haven't heard from Dr. Maxwell, right? About a minute or so?
She started off.
Okay. Well, then it's to you, Dr. Miller, the rooms.
All right, well, we're going to see if I did this correctly. I'm going to open the rooms, and it should assign you to a room, either a for or an against room. So in that room, if you're in room 1, that is the for assignment. For is number 1. The against room is room number 2. I labeled the room, so it should say it when you go there. When you're in that room, try to pull out any main points that you agree with, or at least could see the reasoning behind those main points, and just highlight them a little in that room amongst one another. We're going to ask that you have a natural recorder or reporter. We're going to come back together and just quickly point out those main points. Again, the purpose for this session is not necessarily to resolve an issue or find a solution, but to expand our knowledge around it so we can critically think and grow as human beings. So let me try to open these rooms. If not, then we're gonna do something else. Well, all right, everyone. I got kicked out the breakout room at the end. It looks like Christy did. And so how was that experience? I dropped in on one room to hear some good conversation going on. So someone, I don't know if you designated a person as a reporter or a note taker. Can one person from each room kind of give us some highlights of what happened in your room?
Yeah, room 1, we did have someone who said they were going to take notes, but I didn't catch the name.
I took notes for the 4 room.
So what were some of the main points that came out of your room?
I think the main point is overall, most felt that it is a good idea, but needs some tweaking, if that makes sense. that there were several that felt like, for example, I think it was Ashante is from West Virginia, but never learned that one of the figures from the movie Hidden Figures was actually from West Virginia.
Okay.
And without Black History Month, you know, that would have been an opportunity to learn that. I think, Denise, it was you that mentioned the statistics on the Holocaust. The 8 and 10 out of 10 folks under the age of 40 are now unaware of what happened to the Jewish population in Europe. And her concern is that going to be a similar trend with Black history if we remove Black History Month?
Love it.
I'm looking through my notes here. Tawanda had said she likes Black History Month because, in a sense, it gives most of society permission to talk about Black heroes and things that affect us daily, and it starts a conversation. Without Black History Month, there are certain segments of society that wouldn't even talk about it, which, you know, we've got different states and so on that, because of the way our school systems are, that could eliminate it. You could have entire states eliminating the conversation.
Right.
Maya commented that she was surprised by the American school system that only focused on a few prominent figures with Black History Month.
Right,
that,
right.
you know, she preferred it be expanded.
Right.
And Jamie felt that Black History Month maybe allowed teachers to make sure that material that they might otherwise have to skip because of time constraints and so on, they can come back and actually cover it and look at it a little more closely.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you for that synopsis. As you can see, we can go on and on for this, but we're kind of almost at time. So for the against room, was there anyone who was okay, Dr. Ivy?
I took notes, several of them. Let me go through them. The last individual is making a very powerful statement. She said, we need to feel uncomfortable to grow. Okay. The other point, people should know, understand there are some areas where there are not a lot of Blacks living there, but my goodness, we just had an African-American president of the United States. Let's start there and expand. Okay. The next point, we have taken too many ethnic groups, women's groups, social groups out of our history. We need to put it back and expand as well. The next point, we want to do it all. We want Black History Month, and we want history embedded in curriculum throughout the year. We want it all. The next point, some whites do not want to be reminded of the horrible acts of their parents and what they did. Hence, they want to soften the story and change it. That's changing history right there. The next point, we talked about how in Georgia, and I believe it was Florida, there are directions and we cannot have discussions on certain Black topics, certain Black history, the 1619 Project in effect. How do you stop it? We have to speak up. That's how you stop it, right? And then the last point, agree with the 1 month. There was excitement again for Black History Month because that is a focused time. And also we like the exposure of expanding beyond 1 month.
Love it. Love it. Some great, awesome points that are coming out. Now, as I promised, we want to give our panelists, and I'm sorry, we went to the break room and unpinned you, so you're all over the place. Our panelists, if you have any last words, because the disclaimer I forgot to say in the beginning, but I did put in the chat, is that our panelists, when they agreed to be a part of this, they didn't know that I was going to assign them to a for or against. They did not get to choose. So if there are any strong opinions or strong takeaways or things that you would like to leave our audience with, we'd like to give you a chance for a quick final word. Any of our panelists, just go ahead and unmute and talk.
I'll start. We need the year.
Love it.
In regards to Black History Month, it does teach us that we come from somebody, therefore we are being given permission by them to be somebody.
I like it. I like it. Anyone else?
Yes,
Feedback.
there's
Go ahead.
We'll go with Lisa and then come to Eileen.
Okay.
Perfect. There's a war on truth, right? And Black history is factual information that you can get from most textbooks. But more importantly, race itself, there's a bias. So Project Implicit, if you have any questions on your own racism and biases, you can go to Project Implicit and actually measure it.
Oh,
Put that in the chat for us, Dr. Smith.
Absolutely.
ooh,
Eileen, would you like to speak?
Sure, yes. I would just say, in my thinking, if something or someone is worth celebrating, you shouldn't wait till a certain time of year to do it.
Mhm.
You're not guaranteed tomorrow. We think we all know that after the last couple of years. So if it's worth celebrating, which we all know definitely is, you should celebrate every day and share as much current history as long time history as you can, because I think some of the more current things that are happening now are really inspiring for our young people, and that's what I would encourage.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. I don't know, did any other, the panelists, I think we had one or two more if you want.
Maya was wanting to say
Yes.
something.
I'm going to agree with what everybody said. We do need it a whole year, but we also should celebrate it. And then I also would hope we would stop saying critical race theory and just say history, because it is not critical race theory. It is just history. It is what happened. We can't make this up. Nobody made this up. It is what happened. It is there for our records. And I also agree that not only did we have our first Black president, we also have our first female Black president. So if you're not up to knowing about anything, you should be up there now, because it is literally in your face 24/7. We can't change it anymore.
Outstanding. And I know we're at time. I'm seeing some things in the chat. The Implicity project from Harvard, the link is there. Thank you, Holly, for talking about how it has increased your awareness. We appreciate that. There's also a link in there for the implicit bias. It's like a test. I believe that's what that link is, Vinnie Bob, from Harvard as well. Some of the things that our Turn the Tide folks team have also supplied or offered or made aware, made us expose us to. Listen, we are at time. Thank you for allowing us to go. I think I'm 1 minute over. We thought we were going to go 5 minutes, so we're at 1 minute over. I want to give a round of applause to all of our panelists, especially I'm going to go ahead and say it, Dr. William Hamilton. I know he's still in the process of getting that, but we're going to call things that are not as though they are. We are dream makers. That's what we are. We're educators. So we're just going to say what it is. Give yourselves a round of applause for participating. And we will see you next week, same time, same channel, for the next session, which is In the Presence of Greatness. Does Black impact still exist? Have a great day, everyone.